Welcome back to Brandon Sports Talk. In today's episode, I have the privilege to interview William Anthony, a UNC Tar Heels photographer and also another photographer. How are you doing today?
Doing great, Brandon. Uh, Thanks for having me on this morning. Pleasure to speak with you
You're
about my
welcome.
passion. Yes, sir.
Can you talk about how you got started in sports photography?
Well, yes, Brandon. My sports photography goes back to 2012. I think I started out in track and field. A friend of mine that was a local photographer was covering the Russell E. Blunt track meet over in Durham at Duke University. And that was a yearly summer event where young athletes from the ages of 5 to 18 competed, track and field. It's called East Coast Invitational. And I believe it's still going on right now. So we went up one weekend and I used one of his cameras and got some amazing results for my first time shooting sports photography. Actually, I was shooting in auto mode, didn't know how to shoot manually, but I got some good results that weekend. And he invited me back. The next weekend, we went back again. But before we went back the second time, I went and bought my own camera and lens and had another fabulous weekend. So on the third weekend that we went, I actually was able to work in the photo booth because one of the photo editors didn't show up. So basically, I worked in the photo booth on the Sunday, on the second day of the weekend, and I was able to see some of my work being purchased that I had shot on Friday and Saturday. And that's when I really fell in love because I was able to see my images being purchased by the parents from up and down the East Coast. And that really fueled my passion to know that I was onto something because, my results were selling. And it got me really excited, Brandon. That's basically how I started track and field with the younger kids.
That's so inspiring. How did you know that you wanted to be a photographer, a sports photographer?
But basically, I allude back to that those track meets. Basically, I just noticed that I had a God-given talent. Everybody was telling me. The other photographers, some of those guys were 20-year photographers, and they told me that I had potential to be a good sports photographer. And from that point on, I just started shooting locally at the high school where I went to school at. My high school basketball coach was the athletic director of my local high school, Hertford County High School. And I told him what I was trying to do. He allowed me to come out to the sporting events, kind of hang out. I would go to all of the sports, football, basketball, baseball, soccer, all of the sports. Just kind of take images, didn't have anything to do with them at the time, but I would just take them and edit them. So one night I was out there shooting and my local sports editor noticed me and said he noticed me coming out to a lot of the games. So he told me to start sending him some images. His name is Gene Motley. He's a well-renowned sports editor for 40 years. He's in Wilmington for a while and moved back to Hertford County area. So I started sending him images and lo and behold, he liked my images. So at that time, I became a local Hertford County high school photographer. Okay.
Go on.
Yeah, and just word spread like wildfire. He started sending me to other schools for our local newspaper, private schools in the area, and other surrounding schools in the surrounding counties. So he started putting my images in the newspaper, and word spread like wildfire about my photography, and the people caught on to it somewhat.
What are some of the colleges that you photographed at?
Okay, so the high school level, led to, I think my first college was East Carolina. We had a local high school kid playing at East Carolina. His name was Will Simmons. He was a good offensive tackle, and he played at East Carolina. And being that we had a local kid on the team, East Carolina gave us access to credentials for East Carolina football. So I would go down and cover every game, try to get pictures of him so we could put him in our local newspaper, which in turn that also helped East Carolina spread their sports, images to our area also. So it was a win-win for us in East Carolina. And after East Carolina, it led on to me wanting to shoot other colleges in the area, North Carolina, NC State, and teams like that. So my local sports editor was well known, and he could get me pretty much lots of the colleges because he knew the guys from his sports editor days in Wilmington. So it's a small world in sports photography. People know each other, and he would send me out there and get me media credentials. I would go shoot at Carolina or NC State and situations like that.
What professional teams have you photographed?
Professional teams, quite a few. I started a Facebook page back in 2015, and I started putting all of my sports images out there. And I would actually send friend requests to all of the photographers that I noticed on Facebook, so I can try and build a base with them, study their work, see how they were doing, and studying their images. And lo and behold, one of the photographers was a photographer at LSU Tigers, and he liked my work. And at this time, I was trying to get to the pro level. And he also worked for a news organization in Louisiana. And once a year, New Orleans Saints would come to Carolina Panthers. So the boss that he worked for, LSU, was also the same organization that covered the New Orleans Saints and all of the New Orleans sports. Actually, it's Crescent City Sports. And he told his boss that he had a friend on Facebook that was trying to get into shooting Carolina Panthers football. So he told his boss that he had a friend that may be able to help him out on some of the road games when the Saints would go to Charlotte and other places. So basically, he went with him, and he gave me a shot back in 2015. And I went down and covered a Carolina Panthers New Orleans Saints game and sent images back. He loved the images. And from that point on, I was able to get other New Orleans Saints road games. They had photographers for their home games, but the road games not as much. So that's how I got into professional sports. And to answer your question, professional sports football teams, I've been to New York, covered the Saints at New York. I've covered the Saints at Atlanta 3 times, Saints at Baltimore, of course, Saints at Panthers probably 5 times. Had the privilege of going to Tampa Bay last year, covered Saints at Tampa Bay. That was really cool because I was able to take my wife and we did a little vacation while we were down there, shooting the game on Sunday. Made a vacation out of that. So several of the East Coast teams I've covered through New Orleans Saints.
Are there any teams in the professional league that you're looking to go into covering?
Well, I think the ultimate goal is just personal goal is to go to each NFL stadium and cover that team in every stadium. That's just a personal goal that I want to make happen. Of course, the Saints will end up playing all of the teams on the road. So that is the goal to, go to all the NFL stadiums. That's just a personal goal of mine.
Can you talk about your experience photographing UNC games?
You talking football or basketball or both?
You can do both.
Okay. So Carolina football, very exciting cover for Carolina football. That was ACC, which in our area, that is the Mecca for our local area. I think the first Carolina game was Carolina versus Miami Hurricanes, and that was 2013, Thursday night game. It was called Zero Dark Thursday. I don't know if you remember, Brandon, but that was a big game. It came down to the last play of the game. I think Miami scored on the last play of the game, 17-13. I may be wrong there, but very exciting, Brandon. That game was at 7:30 on ESPN. And I got there really early. I got there at 3:30, got to hang out with the guys, and, it's just like a kid in a candy store back at that time. I was really, really excited. I knew I was onto something back then because I was covering Carolina football on Thursday night on ESPN. And I've been back to Chapel Hill several times to cover local games. Now, bear in mind, most of those Carolina ACC games, I got credentialed through my sports editor, Gene Motley, which he knew everybody in the area. So basically, I can say, Gene, I want to go and shoot Carolina at, Duke in Carolina, State in Carolina. And most times he would get me in, and I'm going to make sure he gets credit for that because, I'm not doing it on my own. He's been a big help. The Carolina basketball, that's a different story. We had this thing at the news Grunch One News Herald office that NC State and some of the other East Carolinas or whatnot were not hard to get in as far as basketball, but Carolina basketball was really, really hard to get in because it's Carolina. Also Duke. I was able to get in several state games through my local sports editor, but when it came to getting Carolina basketball, we would get declined to the point where, it's like, we basically stopped trying to get Carolina basketball. So the story with Carolina basketball, how I got in there was actually Instagram friend of mine liked my work. And back in 2018, she sent me an Instagram message and said that she was considering me to cover her spot for a North Carolina game, a non-conference game. She was pregnant, and actually she wasn't pregnant at that time. This particular time, I'm sorry, she was having to go out and cover the Rose Bowl she had the opportunity to cover the Rose Bowl in football, and she needed someone to take her place for the Carolina versus Davidson basketball game in 2018. So she went to her boss, which was, I forgot the name of the newspaper, but he gave me a chance to sit in her spot for the Carolina Davidson game. And I went, and I think I did a good job because he liked the photos. And so in 2019, Carolina basketball schedule rolls around again. And I call her up and I say, if you need any help in 2019, let me know. I'll come and, shoot in your place. So in 2019, she was pregnant, having a baby. So I thought maybe I could shoot a game for her, but they were using interns to cover her for that. So I took a chance, and I knew I had images, Brandon, from 2018 when I went for the Davidson game. So I sent some of my images to the UNC basketball associate athletic director, and he really liked my images from the year past. So he invited me to come up and do a non-conference game, which was Winston-Salem State was Carolina's first exhibition game last year. I went up and shot that game, Brandon, and I sent him photos at halftime. He loved the photos. So I sent him 10 at halftime, and then I went back out and started shooting. And when I left the game, I sent him more images right before I left the media room. And Brandon, on the way home, I get an email from him. And I pulled over the side of the road and read the email. And the email basically stated, can you move to Carolina? Can you move to Chapel Hill and cover all of the games? I was ecstatic. I was sitting beside the road reading this email, and I said, yes. Can I call you when I get home? So I get back home and I edit the photos. I fall asleep, and the next morning I call him back. We had a long conversation, and at the end of the conversation, he sent me an email telling me that I can cover all of the Carolina basketball home games. So now I'm really onto something. So I went back to Chapel Hill and covered, I think, 8 or 10 home games this past year. Duke at Carolina was the big one. You remember that overtime game, I already did that one and got some amazing shots. So then, of course, the pandemic hit. Things kind of fell off. But we had one more conversation at the end of the season, and that conversation, we discussed me shooting Carolina football in 2021 season. And at this time, if things let up, with the pandemic, I'll be also covering Carolina football basically full time and basketball. So very exciting times right now, Brandon, pertaining to Carolina.
That's so exciting. What players have you shot before at Carolina?
Oh man, last year basketball season, we had Kobe White, which was first round draft pick. I was able to cover him his 1 year at Carolina. Nazir Little was also first round draft pick at Carolina. Meeting Roy Williams, face to face, shaking his hand, things like that. I'm a big Carolina basketball fan. And to say that my first time attending a Carolina game was under the Carolina basket with my lens was really, really incredible. Something I never, ever forget. I'm blessed, Brandon, very, very grateful to have these opportunities. Of course, this year, Cole Anthony, he's going to be a mega star in the NBA. Probably got 500 pictures of him, Of course, all the other players, such as, let's see, all the Carolina players from this year, but of course, Cole Anthony stands out, the most.
What players in the football did you cover for Carolina?
Okay, let's see, Carolina football. Let's see. Oh, Ryan Switzer, he's the one that stood out quite a bit. I remember Switzer getting a kickoff in the Miami game a couple years ago. He returned a kickoff, I think 95 yards for a touchdown. That was exciting. He ran into my frame, ran out of my frame, and I shot him from behind. That kid was amazing. Let me see, I'm trying to think of some other Carolina football players. Quite a few. Just can't think of, Switzer is the main one at the time. Mitchell Trubisky. Got a story about him. Mitchell Trubisky, I shot Carolina at Duke. One and only Duke football game at Duke. That was a Thursday night game also. And I think Carolina was ranked in the top 20, and Duke upset them that night. Very, very cold night, but I was able to go to Wallace Rose Stadium and cover that. Mitchell Trubisky was, the number one, first round pick, and of course Duke had the quarterback that's for the Giants now. They went head to head. Can't think of his name. What's his name, Brandon? Giants quarterback?
Eli Manning?
No, the one that they just drafted. He took Eli Manning's place. I can't think of his name. anyway, they went head to head on the Thursday night. So that was exciting times. I was able to do 2 Thursday night ESPN football games in ACC. That was big stuff. Yes.
What was your experience like photographing NC State games?
Okay, NC State football. I remember photographing Jalen Samuels, which was the do everything kid at NC State. I think he got drafted by Pittsburgh Steelers in 2018. Also, Jacoby Brissett. Um, I think he got drafted by New England in 2016 NC State. Those 2 quarterbacks were, mega stars in ACC. Lots and lots of photos of them guys. NC State basketball, covered NC State at Carolina basketball this year, and I covered Carolina at NC State basketball. As you know, Brandon, Carolina State used to be the big rivalry before Duke and Carolina. In my high school days, Carolina State was the rival. It wasn't Duke at Carolina. It was NC State and Carolina. So those was big games. I've covered several Carolina State football games over the years also.
How is your experience covering ECU football?
ECU football was probably where it started at in college. We had a kid at East Carolina, like I said, Will Simmons from Hertford County High School. And, my daughter graduated with him. He was a friend of mine, friend of the families, our family, his family. And I always went down and covered, focused on him and got all the other kids as well. Of course, Hort Ayers from D.H. Conley, which is quarterback now, very exciting kid. Shane Crossan, which was there before Holt. Justin Hardy, another local guy from Vance County, broke the NCAA receiving record, all-time receiving record. And lo and behold, 2 years later, Isaiah Jones came behind him and broke it at East Carolina also. So that was back when East Carolina was having lots and lots of TV games. I think they were on ESPN 2016-17, like 4 or 5 times. ESPN2. Great offensive juggernauts back then. Yes.
What is your experience like photographing the NFL?
Oh my goodness. NFL 2015 Saints at Panthers, September 27th, actually. My first NFL game. Brandon, I had covered the day before. I covered East Carolina, Virginia Tech at East Carolina on that Saturday. That's when they had the big rainstorm, like a monsoon. Game didn't get canceled, but everybody got soaking wet. I stayed for the whole game. Most of the photographers left at halftime because it was so bad. But I never left games early because I didn't want to miss any shots. So that game I got drenched, and that Saturday night I drove over to Charlotte, spent the night, and the next day I covered my first NFL game. Game started at 1 o'clock. I was there at 10 o'clock, waiting for doors to open. I get to the stadium and walk on Panther Stadium for the first time, and I think I kissed the ground. I couldn't believe that little country boy from a high school in North Carolina was actually on the sidelines of the NFL. I never forget that moment. Got a little story. Everybody said Cam Newton always warmed up early. So I'm out there early waiting for Cam Newton to warm up. Cam Newton takes 2 laps around the field. Then he goes and prays at the south goal post. So I was waiting for Cam Newton. I heard a big crowd. I didn't see him. When Cam Newton came towards me that first time, I was shaking so much, Brandon, that I missed the shot. You know what I mean? Cam Newton was running right into me, and I missed the shot because I was just so excited. I was that close to Cam Newton. So he made a second trip around the field. When he came back the second time, I tore him up. I got some good shots of him. Um, just getting the NFL experience is very exciting. Panther Stadium, packed house, sold out stadium, and it's back in 2015. Been going there ever since. Um, with the Saints up and down the East Coast, got to photograph Eli Manning when the Saints went to New York, 2018. Um, Baltimore Ravens, all the exciting players. Saints at Washington Redskins, that was exciting, being at FedEx Stadium. So NFL versus, go ahead.
Can you talk about your experience with the SEC championship, photographing that?
Yes, of course. SEC championship. My first SEC championship, Brandon, was 2015. Flew down to Atlanta. It was Alabama versus Florida, 2015 SEC championship. Derrick Henry was, the running back at Alabama at that time. Of course, everybody knows him now, Tennessee Titans. Definite Hall of Famer there. That was really exciting. SEC championship, I think there was 21 NFL players from those two teams that year. Of course, Alabama probably had 7 first-round draft picks or more. Alabama dominated Florida that day. Those were exciting times. Got to stay downtown Atlanta with the full shuttle service, back and forth to the stadium. Get the full fan experience before the game. Very exciting. So this year I went back to cover the SEC championship game, which of course was Alabama and Georgia. And in 2015, it was the old Georgia Dome. This year it was Mercedes-Benz Stadium, which great facility, state of the art. Lots of action in that game. Of course, everybody knows LSU dominated, everybody this past season, winning the national championship. So I've been to the Mercedes Superdome. I went 3 times this year. Actually I went for the Peach Bowl also, back when they played in the college playoffs this year against Oklahoma. So Atlanta Falcons in the Mercedes Dome versus the Saints, and Peach Bowl and SEC championship. I think I flew down to Atlanta 3 times in 30 days. It was exciting. Yes.
What professional teams have you covered besides the Panthers and the New Orleans Saints?
Okay, basically I've covered the Indianapolis Colts against the Panthers. I think that was 2015 Monday night game. Colts at Panthers. Of course, Atlanta Falcons, New York Giants, Baltimore Ravens, Tampa Bay Buccaneers, all playing against the Saints. I do want to add that when I shot the 2015 Monday night Colts at Panthers game, I got in on that game on my own because I had been there several times before. And actually the day before, this was November 1st, 2015, we had a local high school basketball player, Kent Bazemore, who played in our local area, ended up getting drafted by the Atlanta Hawks. So being that he was local, my sports editor, Gene Motley, got me credentials to shoot that game, which was Atlanta versus, I think, Detroit. So that was on that Sunday. So I commissioned to apply for credentials on my own. No, actually, let me back up, Brandon. That was the Atlanta Hawks at Charlotte Hornets, okay, on that Sunday. And I applied for credentials for the Monday night game, and I told the Panthers media director that I was going to be in town shooting the Atlanta Hawks and Charlotte Hornets on that Sunday. And I sent him photos of some of my other Carolina Panthers work. And I told him I was going to be in town, and I would like to know if he would let me have credentials for the Monday night game. And lo and behold, he did, Brandon, based on my prior photographs that I sent him. The fact it was a Monday night game, the fact the sidelines wasn't very, very busy because a lot of the photographers don't shoot Monday nights and Thursday nights because they're working the next day. So the fact it was a Monday night game, he let me in. And that was another great game. That rain. But I think that the Panthers won that game in dramatic fashion at the end also.
Can you talk about the book that you recently wrote?
Okay, I haven't written the book yet, but everywhere I go, Brandon, I kind of document the journey. I always, get someone to take a photo of me in each stadium that I go to. And at some point in the near future, I am going to write like a documentary of my journey as a sports photographer coming from small town and, getting to the NFL, NBA. Just taking lots of notes right now. I can't write the book because the journey is still, going on. So at some point, I just cut it off and kind of document it, put it on page with photos of some of my big, sports events, SEC championship, Duke, Carolina basketball, things like that. So at some point there will be a book about my journey.
What are the upcoming things that we can look forward to seeing you do?
Okay. Hopefully, I'll be shooting Carolina football as one of their photographers in the upcoming season. And I think the Saints will be going to Detroit, Denver, Las Vegas, Philadelphia. We'll be going to some different cities that I've never been to. So, like I said, Brandon, that'll be my ticket to basically get to all the NFL stadiums through those guys at New Orleans Saints. Actually, exclusively Crescent City Sports, major news outlet in New Orleans. And, this would be my 5th or 6th year with them guys. And hopefully I continue to do a good job and to do more of those stadiums. The big list is, shooting the major college football rivalries. I want to go to the big house and shoot Michigan and Ohio State. I want to shoot the Rose Bowl, USC, UCLA. I want to go to Oregon, Nike Town, shoot the Ducks, Pac-12 football. Got a long list, Brandon. You're a sports guy. It never ends, man. Just want to get out there and just see what I can do in all the sports venues, basically. Football and basketball, mainly.
Where can my listeners first, what advice would you give a sports photographer pursuing the career?
Okay, I would tell any sports photographer, it's going to be hard to just get in the NFL or NBA or ACC for that matter. I would say build up a portfolio. If you got a camera lens and you have passion for sports photography, you can get there. You will get there. I'm in a small town, 5,000 people, great people in the area. But for those guys out there to know you and know your name and know your work, you got to shoot local. Brandon, I shoot T-ball, I shoot Little League, track, basketball, football, for 5 years on up. So build a portfolio because high school football and pro football is all football, so build a portfolio. And, Brandon, I tell people that if you live in an area and you got a lot of good athletes, if one of those athletes make it, then that's your ticket. Because sure enough, in Hertford County, we had an athlete that make it at East Carolina. So it was easy to get at East Carolina and cover that athlete because we had a local interest, to get his photos back here to our local area. And it also helped East Carolina expand their brand up into the northeastern area of North Carolina. So wherever you are in America, just shoot a lot, have passion, treat everybody kindly. You never know, Brandon, who's looking. You never know, where your work is going. So treat everybody nice and send your work out there. Take good images. Only post your best images. And people, you never know. Just get out there and work. But the key thing I think is to treat people kindly, treat everybody kindly, and word of spread. Word of mouth is powerful. That's exactly what it did for me from a high school in North Carolina. It was word of mouth. Yeah, I give a lot of credit to my local community, my local athletic director, and especially my local sports editor, Gene Motley.
Where can my listeners find you at?
Okay, social media platforms. My Facebook page is William Anthony. That's William Anthony. And if you go on the Facebook page and click on my photos under my profile, that's where you'll see a lot of my college football, pro football, college basketball, college football. A lot of my highlighted work is right there on my Facebook page. If you click on my photos, I make albums for most of my big sporting events. Also, Instagram is at Dynamic Photo Video. One word, at Dynamic Photo Video. You can find my Instagram, and that has everything, all of my images. I think I got in Carolina basketball based on my Instagram account, because when the lady that I covered set in for that day, when she told her bosses, it was actually Tar Heel Illustrated that I worked for that first Davidson Carolina game. I started getting a lot of Instagram, requests from different venues at UNC basketball. And I think what they were doing was going inside of my Instagram page and taking a look at my work. Not necessarily my sports work, but I think they were just trying to see what kind of person I was, because you're going to kind of post your life on Facebook and Instagram. You basically post your life, and Brandon, my life is there's a lot of sports. I have a full-time job, but sports is also a full-time job. So I'm a very busy man. Yeah.
Thank you again for your interview. You can find Brandon Sports Talk on Facebook at Brandon Sports Talk, Instagram at Brandon Sports Talk, Twitter at @talk_Brandon, and you can find us on YouTube at Brandon Sports Talk. Don't forget to like, subscribe, comment, and share. Thank you again for your interview, William.
Thank you, Brandon. It's my pleasure. I really appreciate you, buddy. I look forward to shooting a couple of games with you in the upcoming season. Maybe it's some East Carolina football, as we discussed.
Can't wait.
Yes, sir. Yes, sir. We're going to make it happen. Thanks a lot.
You're welcome.